Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Sadler, and today we're talking about more bad bills being introduced by our Nevada lawmakers. The siege continues. A couple new bills trying to slide in that will serve to only bolster the Democratic Party's G.I. Joe Kung Fu grip on our elections are here. Shouldn't really surprise us. Another major bill subverting parental rights and likely making sex traffickers and predators happy. There's a 30-plus page woke bill making it tough on vandals, but only in the typical left-wing divisive way. Then there's another woke bill, this time making our healthcare system a bit more divisive. I guess healthcare divisiveness goes well with overpriced, inefficient, and inaccessible. We'll also touch on some upcoming events, along with some more psychological insights into our community and its leaders. Fun stuff. Putting that UNLV bachelor's degree to use today, I guess. I'm looking forward to the start of spring and hopefully light at the end of Joe Biden's dark winter. Let's get to it, shall we? I'm pretty sure the theme of the 2023 legislative session here in Nevada is the siege or the takeover, the hostile takeover. That's what they're doing right now. So how better to do that than by subverting, laying siege to our electoral and election systems? So two major bills I came across that I'm going to save for last. So we're going to save those election bills for the end. So we'll start with Senate Bill 172. So this little doozy, it relates to minors and our government's fascination with lording over and confiscating our children. I don't understand. Well, I do understand. Years ago, they would come after children out of high school, into the colleges, indoctrination through certain agendas at the university or the college level. Now they're looking to do it much earlier. So the bill that we're talking about here pertains specifically to underage kids. And basically, as it relates to the healthcare system. So Senate Bill 172, it's an act relating to healthcare that authorizes a minor to give consent to certain healthcare providers for certain services for the prevention of sexually transmitted diseases in pregnancy and providing other matters properly related thereto. So what the synopsis of the bill fails to state is that these things are going to be expressly done without the written consent of parents, of minors, of minor children. So existing law right now goes on to state prohibits an employee or volunteer at a family resource center which has received a grant from the director of the Department of Health and Human Services from administering drugs or contraceptives, that would be birth control, to or performing medical or dental procedures for a minor without written consent from the parent, guardian, or legal custodian of the minor. They reference NRS 430A 180. So NRS 430A.180. This bill is looking to go ahead and throw that out of there. So one of the unintended consequences of this is that this is not only going to be incentivizing our children to be more lewd at a young age, for lack of a better word, off the top of my head here. It's also going to incentivize them getting, birth control, despite their parents, whether their parents are religious or whether they're just trying to be moral when it comes to how they want their children to behave. Maybe they come from a household that preaches abstinence only, until marriage or until, adulthood. So this is a direct attack on that. Parents have the right to raise their kids in a way, and they have the very basic right, at the very least, to be informed of medical procedures, medical the administering of pharmaceuticals to their kids medically, their minors. They have the right to be aware of that. And then they have the right to either consent or decline those services. And pushing them out of the loop, like other bills have been attempting to do this session, it's kind of making me sick. It's making me feel like, we're, in the wild, when you look at predators, they're on the hunt. And sometimes they're tiring out a wildebeest or some other unlucky, poor, sometimes even large creature out in the wild. They wait them out. They tire them out. And that's what I feel like is going on here in our community, even with the solar fields, right? With the industrial solar farms that are out here, or trying to come out here. It just seems like they're going to keep coming and coming and coming and wearing us out and wearing us out and wearing out the fortitude of our elected officials, who many of them attest that they are ardently against these farms, but they're going to keep getting hit up by proposal after proposal from these different companies until we're going to see it one time all over and surrounding our beautiful community and in our public lands that are right by our neighborhoods. We're gonna see that. It's just they're like the Terminator, right? I mean, John Connor's mom could run away from the Terminator in that movie because she's the good guy, she's the hero. It's obviously a fictional movie, but she can get out of the way. But how many of our elected officials are like John Connor's mom from the Terminator? I'm not that confident in them. Are you? Honestly, are you? And even at a common sense level, when it comes to this bill that I'm talking about, for instance, SB 172, wow, any remedial logic class that you would take in high school or college, or even in grammar school, is going to teach you that some things just aren't very logical. So in a section on this proposed bill, it states that it authorizes a physician, physician's assistant, registered nurse, or pharmacist who is an employee or volunteer of such a family resource center to provide services for the prevention of sexually transmitted diseases, including the prescribing, dispensing, or administering of a contraceptive drug or device to a minor without consent of the parent, guardian, or legal custodian. Now, I am a product of the public school system in Nevada, but nowhere in any of our classes, whether it was health, the sex ed classes that we would go through, did they state that that contraception was effective in any way of preventing STDs. It just was never taught, and I seriously doubt it's taught now. But the way this reads, that they're authorized to provide services for prevention of STDs, including the prescribing, dispensing, or administering of a contraceptive drug or device, as if that is going to help the cause of prevention of sexually transmitted diseases. It's ridiculous wording, and I'm looking at the sponsors, and obviously it seems to be sponsored by those on the left. It's referred to the Committee on Judiciary. This bill was just introduced, it looks like February 16th, but what I'm finding is I'm looking, on the legislative website, and you're seeing bad bills being introduced almost daily. You gotta play whack-a-mole with all these things kind of popping up from March 7th, March 8th. The election ones that we're going through later are, March 3rd. Both of them come out. So just because in the very beginning when the session starts they've been going for weeks and weeks now, we're not out of the woods, because they can continue introducing bad prospective laws for the next, I think almost 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm afraid there's going to be a mad dash or even more, because they're kind of laying siege to me. They're wearing me out. I feel like I'm that wildebeest being circled by wild animals, by wolves in the wild, or by tigers, or whoever hunts wildebeest. You should watch Discovery Channel and see these things, see documentaries on wildebeest and gazelles and hunting and all that stuff, and now all you see is fake reality shows. That's another topic for another day, though. So needless to say, I hope Senate Bill 172 does not pass. So Governor Joe Lombardo, if you're hearing from your constituents about some of these bad bills, please add SB 172 to that mix. It brings us now to another Senate bill. The Senate sure has been putting out some doozies this session, some bad ones. So now we're going to SB 227. So Senate Bill 227 is here to lower the boom on graffiti artists, vandals, but only if they make certain groups unhappy. So typical divide and ruin tactics by the left. It advocates for early terminations of lease agreements for folks if they're feeling intimidated. So this bill is increasing the crime punishments and consequences for, vandalism, things like that. These are really irritating crimes because a lot of them, the people don't get caught, and when they do, it seems like they're just wrist slapped, especially now in Nye County on charges like this. I'm wondering if they're even getting arrested half the time because the way the laws changed kind of hamstrings our law enforcement on who they can arrest and how they can actually bring people to jail. So this one, I'm for stricter, harsher punishments and tough on law type applications for these folks that get caught doing this, but not when it's just framed in a way that is going to pit, groups against each other, or, what it does is it's in typical fashion, it's trying to separate us along woke lines. So SB 227, it relates to those crimes, providing that a person who etches, paints, draws, or displays a symbol of hate for whatever that can mean. Well, obviously we know there's certain symbols of hate, but when you have writing and laws that's kind of ambiguous at best, there's going to be some unintended consequences when it comes to laws like this. So it anything that draws or displays a symbol of hate under certain circumstances is guilty of the crime of intimidation. And it's requiring a juvenile court to take certain actions concerning a child who is adjudicated delinquent for committing the crime of intimidation. It's providing and authorizing a court to issue certain orders for protection against intimidation. One that I touched on a second ago, it's allowing early termination of leases for tenants who feel intimidated. So again, this is could be another backdoor way of subverting landlord rights in favor of tenants versus my opinion, what it should be is it's a 50-50 two-way road, right? Protect the tenant rights, protect the landlord rights, both sides being respectful, both sides being protected by laws so that there can be fair outcomes, so people can get fair housing and at a fair price. And our lawmakers keep throwing all these little caveats and all these little restrictions. What do you think that's going to do to our housing prices for landlords if they're smart? You think they're going to be a little bit more finicky and choosy on who they rent their properties to? I know I sure would, because you're looking at all these possible pitfalls that can come upon you as a landlord. That if you get a tenant that's willing to try to game the system or argue that they feel like they're being intimidated based upon, their protected status or whatever their, whether it's their ethnicity or their sexual orientation or their identity, gender identity, they're writing these laws, and this is 30 plus pages in this proposed bill that's been referred to the Committee on Judiciary. So again, keep in mind, keep it into perspective. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these proposed laws. If each of these proposed laws happen to be 30 plus pages, I think this one is 36 pages if I'm not mistaken, how are our lawmakers able to go and dissect all this information and make good informed decisions? It's ludicrous. And Section 1 of this bill defines a term symbol of hate to mean a symbol, image, or object that expresses animus on the basis of race, color, religion, ancestry, disability, sex, sexual orientation, national origin, gender identity, or expression. So there it is. I think every other bill, and I don't even know if that's me exaggerating, but it seems like every other bill being proposed by a litany of Democrats in the Senate or the Assembly in Carson City are including those words. It's like they have to be in almost every single bill that comes across. So yeah, put a fork in SB227. That one is a bad one. Again, not only unnecessary, but unintended consequences abound in a bill like that. Moving on to another one. We're going to go over a total of 5 of them today, and this is the third one I wanted to touch on. AB 267. It's requiring the Office of Minority Health and Equity of the Department of Health and Human Services to distribute CE coursework, continuing education coursework, that basically triples the every 2-year educational requirement for mental health professionals. Well, that's progress for you. I mean, we're creating another bureaucratic. Just listen to what that it's the creation of Minority Health and Equity of the Department of Health and Human Services. So every single thing that I'm seeing in bills like this, it's disheartening because everything is divisive along racial, ethnic, or sexual orientation lines. It's getting so tiresome. I mean, when it comes to healthcare, shouldn't the main onus on continuing education and any kind of oversight be done in a way that just makes doctors better doctors, whether the patient is black, white, Chinese, non-binary, binary, 5 feet tall, 7 feet tall? Should any of those things matter? I mean, I want to go to a facility, if I'm being taken care of or my family's being taken care of, where they are employing the best doctors, the best nurses, regardless of what kind of sensitivity training that they're undergoing. I mean, that's the whole nature of medicine in science, objectivity. By inserting and forcing these standards that are just, at best, they're subjective standards of righteousness when it comes to putting people in groups, or they're not. It's not science, and they're conflating and they're mixing things together that don't belong. So we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to start talking about some of those election change laws being proposed, and some other items, some current events going on in our town, and some upcoming events. So stick around. Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. Then press 1. Someone is available who cares. Someone is available who will listen. Someone is available who will help. Veterans Crisis Line. 988. And we're back. Thank you for standing by. Now for some fun stuff. We're going to go into the proposed legislation that is effectively designed to, in my opinion, ruin fair elections for good out here in Nevada. So let's try to get ahead of the curve here and talk about a few of these bad ones. AB 242, so Senate Bill 242, it basically prohibits voting on paper ballots at the polls statewide. So regardless of county, takes that jurisdiction away from the county clerks to oversee their own local elections, and places the power, in the state law, basically telling them exactly how voting goes down. It makes the machines effectively mandatory. So the synopsis of AB 242, relating to elections, revising provisions relating to the authorized methods of voting in an election under certain circumstances, revising provisions relating to accommodations for certain voters who are elderly or have a disability, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. So again, this is one of those tricky little bills, and in the little synopsis, it's throwing out things that most people could agree on. Most rational human beings would want certain accommodations for elderly folks or for people who are disabled. So that's how they kind of package it. So a brief overview of some of these proposed laws as you're going up and down, looking at them, that makes it appear innocuous, but it's far from that. Because right now, existing law provides voting at any election conducted, printed on ballots, or by other systems approved by the Secretary of State, or specifically authorized by law. So the certain laws pertaining to elections right now, as they stand, are okay with paper ballots. Like we elected here in Nye County to go to all paper ballots on in-person votings, except for that one ADA compliant voting machine. So for folks who needed that extra assistance and to make their voting easier, we had that accommodation here in Nye County, so we were compliant. And this law just kind of has been proposed only about a week or so. So March 3rd is when this one came out. And it's now going to strike that from the law to make it to where pretty much voting machines are going to be the law. Mechanical voting systems, this alludes to, that are used to cast, register, record, and count ballots or votes in all statewide county, city, and district elections of any kind held in the state. So it's going to prohibit, it expressly in sections 5, 9, and 15 of the bill, prohibits the use of paper ballots when voting in person at the polls at an election in this state, and instead requires all votes cast in person at a polling place be cast using a mechanical voting system. That goes for Clark County as well as Nye County and all, I don't know, dozens and dozens, or maybe, they have hundreds of voters in Esmeralda County, but you're only looking at a few hundred votes out there, several hundred maybe. They're going to now be required to use mechanical voting machines. So this is one of a handful of bills, ep24, that is looking to hijack, in my estimation, the election system out here in Nevada. And then following up with that one, AB246, this is the other bill. This is that bill's close relative. It's the crazy uncle. Two words I use a lot, but I don't love them to come to mind. And I said it earlier in the show. It's unintended consequences. It's more blah, 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 mandatory language. County clerks and election officials will be forced to make voting materials and certain election info available in certain languages. It uses that word certain materials, certain languages. It's another unfunded mandate. That is what the Dems, way more than a baker's dozen of them, have decided to sponsor. They must have put all their heads together on this one. So county clerks are going to need to establish a 1-800 hotline, a 1-800 number, a hotline for language interpretation assistance. And they must also make a good faith effort to appoint election board officers who are bilingual. Again, this diversity, equity, inclusion agenda from the left, rearing its ugly head, trying to get embedded in our local and state laws. And worst of all, having these divisive, polarizing, in my estimation, call it reverse racism, call it racism. I mean, what would Dr. Martin Luther King say to some of these things? I don't think he would consider this to be equal opportunity under the law. This idea of equity and things like that in hiring and appointing officials based upon their language skill, their ethnicity, I think it's garbage. That's what it's getting at here. So this is effectively growing the powers of the Secretary of State's office, and it consequently subverts the powers of county clerks. So here at the Nevada Patriot Podcast, we're trying to get our county clerk, Mark Kempf, on the show to elaborate on these and other dangerous bills being proposed. So what are the ramifications? What are the costs? And what are the consequences? So again, whack-a-mole. And a litany of different topics, a litany of different things that are important to Nevadans. It just seems like there are several bills being proposed, and it's not enough to defeat one or two of them, although we have to defeat at least one or two of them in each of these categories or genres of horrible laws out there. When it comes to subverting parental rights, hijacking our elections, impeding law enforcement in their day-to-day duties, making regulatory things tougher on businesses, eviscerating the rights of landlords in favor of tenants, which basically ends up doing the exact opposite of what they're trying to do: promote fair housing, promote lower prices for people to have their rents. What it's going to do, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to raise the rents. Any sane landlord now has to really, really be on the defensive and protect their assets. The more the government meddles in our lives, the more difficult and expensive it gets. So let us know what you think at the Nevada Patriot Podcast, or you can email our show here. It's Matt Sadler for Nevada at yahoo.com. You can also get in touch with the station, 97.7, where this is airing. It'll air a couple times this week. You can try reaching out to them. 1-877-PERUMP is the number to the station. So if you have questions, if you have input, if you have insight, if I'm missing something, if I'm getting something totally wrong, let me know. If you agree, let our legislators know. Go to the legislative website, find their emails, find their phone numbers on some of these bills, especially any of these ones that really hits home to you. Let them know. Let them know that you're not in favor of it. Because sometimes I think they live in a bubble, and if they know they're going to irritate enough people, I think it will cause them to change their ideas. And kind of parrying off that idea behind our elected officials, that sometimes we can't read their minds. We can't make assumptions on what they're doing, why they're doing it. I don't like to attribute malice where you can attribute, carelessness or lack of foresight. I don't want to assume people are always doing things purposefully that are, to antagonize us. I just think they don't do enough to not antagonize us, the voters, the people that they're there to represent. And even some of their supporters, and we see it. We're more of a political town here in Pahrump, believe it or not, than most places, than cities like Las Vegas, where people are very apolitical. It's a different dynamic out here. There's more involvement. There's more care. There's more, strong opinions out here per capita than you would find in places like Las Vegas. So as a consequence to that, you'll have surrogates or supporters of certain people that constantly want to conflate personal attacks with disagreements. Now, I'm always of the mind that you attack the ideas, you attack the actions, you don't attack the person, you don't attack the character. Although sometimes when push comes to shove, those lines can blur, trust me. But for the most part, on this show, or in people that I've had on my show, and people that you've heard on 97.7 during the Your 2 Cents hours at 6 p.m., 7 days a week. I mean, you'll have guests on shows or hosts on some of the shows. If people's policies, if their ideas are being attacked, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're being assaulted, abused. People need to just grow up, grow some thick skin. I mean, and I've heard people on this station say things that I disagree with. Someone extols the virtues basically of Marxism and communism, Someone on this network likes to state things that the January 6th insurrection was relatable to one of the biggest atrocities that we've ever known and it's not. I mean, and you can see from the information dump that you're finding on networks, whether you're looking at Tucker Carlson or other podcasts or other TV shows you're listening, there was a massive cover up. There was a massive misinformation campaign to make a lot of those people, make them look to be domestic terrorists when they're not. They're the furthest thing from domestic terrorists. They were definitely led in there by Capitol Police and security forces, chauffeured almost, tour guided throughout the facility, to then now be facing years in prison. Give me a break. But then again, like this is where the First Amendment lives, 97.7, where the First Amendment lives. So there's room for that. If you think that the appointment process for our Justice of the Peace was fair and equitable, no, it wasn't. And just because that process was not fair and equitable doesn't mean that the person holding that office right now, I'm personally attacking. Okay? It's not like that. I grew up in Vegas, right? So in Vegas, you always heard some people getting good jobs at casinos, whether it was valet parking or bellhops or whatever, not based upon their ability or a fair playing field, but their juice, right? Who they knew. If their uncle was a pit boss or had a relative that was a VP or somebody that had, head of security at one of the properties, they could juice their 18-year-old nephew or son or friend of a friend and get them a crack at a job and kind of like put them to the front of the line. So to an outsider, it's fair to say that that's unfair, right? Because it is, because there's plenty of people who deserve those jobs and deserve cracks at those jobs that don't get those jobs because they don't have the juice. Now, if you were taking your application process seriously at some of these resorts and you're applying at all these places just to find out that the sons of pit bosses and people that have juice are constantly getting jobs, and you complain about it, which you have a right to complain about it, I believe, are people going to sit there and say, "Oh no, trust the process. The person that got the job, let's give them a chance. Let's give them a chance to really be a good. Maybe they're a great valet parker. Maybe they're really good at stick shift and they can back up without even using the rear view mirror. Maybe let's give them a shot." No, that's not the point. The point is not whether they can do the job or not. The point is, was it a fair process? And now take that to Nye County. Is it a fair process when people get appointed to positions out here based upon juice? No. And I'm not saying every appointment is like that. There's been some good appointments out here. There's been some great ones. There's been some officials that have left us high and dry, and appointments had to be made, and I think a few of those were excellent appointments. The Justice of the Peace one, this last one, no, it wasn't. And this idea that we're now, if we don't just give the process a chance and give the person a chance, then we're hateful or this or that, and we're not. No, I hope this Justice of the Peace here in Pahrump is fantastic and does a great job. And that person could do a great job. That person might go down as one of the best JPs that we've ever had. Doesn't make the process proper, and it doesn't make the process fair. So there, I've said my piece on that. So please, people, stop conflating personal attacks with disgust about the political processes. They're two different things. You're not personally attacking someone because you're attacking a corrupt process. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. So we're going to go on to, before we close out the show here, about some upcoming events. One coming up here pretty soon. Saturday, March 18th, there's going to be a solar farm meeting. This meeting is going to be held at Coyote's Den at 1 p.m. on Saturday, March 18th. And it's basically an opposition type meeting, according to my understanding. And I oppose these things. I don't want industrial solar farms all over our valley, all over the BLM lands out here. I do not want that. From the get-go, I was happy to go to those meetings and express my disdain for that concept. So please, we're going to need the numbers because, like we said earlier in the show, we're under siege. They're trying to wear us down. So you have to stand your ground, and that rhymed. So here we go. Next point. Grassroots Conservatives of Nevada, the group that we're forming here, we're still tentatively looking at Monday, March 27th to meet at 6 p.m. at the Bell Bonds office at the corner of 160 in Basin. However, we're still a little bit, in the tentative process of confirming that because some water damage remediation to a few of the units in that complex is still underway. Drywall and things had to be removed and replaced, and fixtures and different things in some different units, and my unit was affected. So that's going to have to probably, I'm hoping we still have a good 2.5 weeks until then. So let's hope that we can make that happen, but I'll be confirming or pushing that back shortly. So stay tuned on that. You could always check out updates on the NevadaPatriot.com for that. And then May 7th at 2 p.m., Artesia Community Center, the first ever conservative women's tea is going to be held there at 2 p.m. That's Sunday, May 7th. Tickets right now are on Eventbrite. The link is on the website, thenevadapatriot.com. You can purchase tickets there. It's $35. It's going to include food, tea, obviously. It's going to include entertainment, guest speakers. There's going to be raffles, silent auction. It's going to be a good time. It's definitely going to be a good time for the ladies. It's open to members, female members of other parties or no party at all. It's open to nonpartisans, independent voters, Republicans, whoever. It's a conservative women's tea. So obviously the speakers and the things are going to be geared toward the promotion of conservative values. Women business owners out here in Pahrump are highly recommended that you get involved with that, or if you're looking to maybe be a sponsor or sponsor a gift basket or get involved in that way, it's probably going to be a great way to promote yourself in your local business. So get in touch with us here at the Nevada Patriot, thenevadapatriot.com. Fill out the comment form, and my wife or another lady will certainly get in touch with you. So I appreciate you hanging out with us here on another episode of the Nevada Patriot Podcast. On behalf of the Nevada Patriot Podcast and 97.7 FM, God bless you.
Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.